love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird.
It instantly became the #1 most downvoted trailer in the history of the platform.
And then they couldn't put dwarfs because this is just so typical of the left. The progressives always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive.
And then she, like, minutes later followed it up with, and never forget, free Palestine. This is just like a few months after 10/7.
If I'm going to stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
Snow White, budget $250 million, box office $43 million. Oh, but it's only been 2 days. Give it a chance. No, I'm not going to give it a chance. I'm not even...
This is what theaters look like across the world, and it just keeps getting worse. The memes.
It was a wholesome family film, and now they've turned it into woke trash. Check this out.
Making another animated classic instead of making something new. But yes, it's all Rachel Zegler and her behavior.
Once upon a time, a gigantic entertainment corporation, fondly dubbed the House of Mouse, decided to rework a classic gem from its vault, Snow White. You know, the 1937 animated movie that's practically older than the idea of modern color television. At first glance, it seemed like a surefire recipe for success. Choose a singer-dancer with star potential, shove her into the famous Snow White dress, maybe add some sparkly CGI forest creatures, and watch the dollars roll in before the trailer even finishes. Then came the conundrum of whether to feature the 7 dwarfs as they originally were, which turned into a separate headache when Peter Dinklage, an immensely talented actor of short stature, raised very valid concerns about perpetuating stereotypes. Ultimately, the studio opted for some form of CGI dwarfs, though even that proved to be a questionable move. But let's not pretend those were the only problems. As it turned out, they cast someone who, almost every time she opened her mouth, unleashed a tidal wave of outrage among the faithful Disney devotees and even intrigued a broader audience that typically couldn't care less about fairy tale remakes. Yes, Rachel Zegler, a performer who managed to insult an entire legacy of animation and beloved family entertainment without seeming to realize just how massive her missteps actually were. From the outset, her statements about the original 1937 film being outdated, bizarre, and in dire need of revision ignited an online blaze so fierce you'd think people were rioting in the streets to defend cartoon princesses. Snow White, for goodness sake, is practically the bedrock of Disney's entire empire. If you have even the tiniest bit of common sense, you'd expect the star of the remake to speak with some measure of reverence toward the film that kicked off Disney's golden age. But no, Zegler took it upon herself to dismiss the old storyline as archaic and unrelatable, calling its romantic arc weird or creepy. One might hope that after stirring that much trouble, she'd simply apologize or go silent. Instead, she doubled down, sounding more and more like a person who'd never seen a Disney film in her life, never mind actually starring in one. If you're already intrigued by this epic PR fiasco, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe to Prestige Stories. Your support keeps us motivated to dissect these colossal Hollywood misfires. Anyway, as if publicly trashing Walt Disney's first animated princess wasn't enough, the meltdown only intensified when we discovered that Zegler also spent a good chunk of time complaining about her experience on West Side Story. Now, can someone explain to me how you go from landing a dream role in a revered musical directed by an award-winning legend to bashing it on social media like you're roasting your worst job out of high school? By the time she took that same attitude to a revered classic like Snow White, it felt like a borderline attempt to sabotage the very brand she'd been hired to champion. Think about it. This woman effectively told potential moviegoers that the core story, beloved for nearly a century, was no longer relevant in 2023, and that her modern take would somehow be superior. Never mind that an overwhelming majority of fans and families have grown up cherishing the original's wholesome charm. Even if, in the privacy of your own home, you regard a 1930s cartoon as old-fashioned or naive, you certainly wouldn't broadcast that sentiment during your press tour if you had any PR savvy at all. Instead, you'd say how timeless it is, how you plan to enrich it with fresh themes, or something along those lines. But apparently, that strategy was too obvious. While you're shaking your head at these baffling promotional tactics, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Prestige Stories. We promise to keep bringing you frank discussions about the entertainment world's most frustrating blunders. By the time Disney's marketing machine finally started rolling out teaser clips and official posters, a large chunk of the internet had already declared, "Not my Snow White." Before a single frame could be properly analyzed by the public, a horde of outraged viewers made their displeasure known. Social media lit up like a fireworks finale on the 4th of July. Influential Disney diehards, YouTube critics, and random folks on Twitter all piled on, accusing Zegler of arrogance, disrespect, and an alarming ignorance of the very role that she was presumably excited to take on. Disney, for its part, scrambled to patch the holes in this sinking ship. Countless marketing attempts, t-shirts, tie-in merch, behind-the-scenes glimpses, did little to change the fact that the leading lady had effectively tarnished the film's image before it even arrived. Meme after meme cropped up, painting Zegler's remarks as the ultimate cell phone and the reimagined Snow White concept as a comedic train wreck. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. By the time it hit theaters, interest was so tepid that you'd think Disney was releasing a random direct-to-video sequel from the early 2000s. In an odd twist, Zegler later tried to backpedal and insisted she was misunderstood, or that she didn't truly mean to deride such a historic piece of cinema. Suddenly, she was giving tearful interviews about how much she cherished Snow White's gentle spirit and how she couldn't wait to honor the story's legacy. Did people buy it? Let's just say the chorus of disbelieving laughter was pretty deafening. Fans compiled her earlier dismissive quotes side by side with the new warm and fuzzy statements, reading them with heavy doses of sarcasm. Even the studio probably realized they'd backed themselves into a corner, but they'd already spent untold millions producing this live-action extravaganza, so scrapping it wasn't an option. If you're wondering how this fiasco continues to spiral, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to Prestige Stories. We break down these Hollywood disasters so you don't have to waste time sifting through spin doctors. The frustration really skyrocketed once the film actually debuted. Typically, you'd think a live-action Snow White would be a must-see event, with families lining up in matching princess costumes to soak in the magic. Instead, many theaters echoed with emptiness. Critics pounced on plot holes, bizarre rewriting of characters, and questionable creative decisions, all while the general public seemed unwilling to throw money at something that had been overshadowed by controversy for months. Also, let's not forget the fiasco with the dwarfs. Instead of enlisting actors of short stature to portray iconic roles, which might have offended some but also created opportunities for representation, the production introduced a strange mix of digital or magical creatures that fell flat. The blowback from that choice sparked yet another round of outraged fans who felt that Disney was pandering to modern sensibilities while simultaneously ignoring the community that might have benefited from those parts. I mean, if you're going to produce a reimagining, at least do it well, right? Yet here we stand, months after the release, and the studio is reportedly sitting on a mountain of losses. Insiders have hinted that entire departments might be shuffled around, and other live-action remakes could be quietly shelved as Disney licks its wounds. The fiasco is so all-encompassing that folks in the industry are now using it as a cautionary tale. Remember Snow White. Don't alienate your core audience before the trailer even drops. If that doesn't tell you how deeply this fiasco penetrated the public consciousness, I'm not sure what will. Sometimes, controversy can drum up interest and ticket sales, but not when that controversy involves mocking the very premise of a beloved classic. Make no mistake, the original 1937 film was no ordinary cartoon. It was a technological marvel for its time, introducing the idea of a feature-length animated movie and paving the way for a massive empire. That's the foundation Zegler thought was strange, outdated, and in dire need of an update. Sure, you might argue that some elements are old-fashioned, societal norms have indeed evolved, but throwing the baby out with the bathwater is one surefire path to alienation. With so many outraged fans, there was virtually no chance for the film to salvage its reputation once the negative dialogue had taken hold. If you're enjoying this deep dive into frustration, Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Prestige Stories. We rely on your support to continue highlighting these head-scratching moments in entertainment history. Now, let's talk about the aftermath. The box office results were anything but magical, barely scraping by in its initial domestic weekend, then plummeting in the subsequent weeks. Internationally, the numbers looked just as bleak. Analysts across the board branded it a flop, a major embarrassment for Disney, and possibly the biggest commercial misfire for a company that used to take these reworks straight to the bank. Meanwhile, alternative theories began swirling. Maybe the marketing wasn't strong enough. Maybe it was too big a gap between the old Snow White and modern viewers, or maybe audience tastes have changed. But if we're being perfectly candid, the sour taste was largely the result of an actress who seemingly relished telling everyone how she didn't respect the source material and believed her version would be so much better. When you set that tone at the start, it's a near impossible hurdle to clear, no matter how much CGI money you throw at the screen. From where I'm standing, the moral of this entire fiasco is glaringly obvious. If you're going to star in a beloved classics remake, especially one that carries as much historical weight and fan devotion as Snow White, do a little homework on why it's beloved in the first place. There's a difference between modernizing a narrative and outright trashing it, especially when the business model relies on those longtime fans to fill seats. A little humility would have gone a very long way. People aren't stupid. They recognize a phony 180 when they see one, and once Zegler got caught disparaging the film, trying to recast herself as its biggest champion came off as comically insincere. Studios should also keep in mind that actors who publicly hate on iconic material might not be the best brand ambassadors for a high-stakes, high-budget remake. And let's be real, we're not short on talented performers who can both act and show a shred of respect for the property they're reviving. If you've got opinions on how this fiasco might have been avoided, or you just want to vent about it, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Prestige Stories. We want to hear your perspectives, and we appreciate the passion you bring to these discussions. It's a wild ride indeed when you think about how a single series of offhand quotes can tank a multi-million-dollar project. Some folks might say it's a shame because the visual effects and production design might have had some interesting aspects. Others maintain that the entire concept was doomed once the star essentially launched a preemptive strike on the hearts of Disney's most loyal audience members. Maybe the right approach would have been to champion Snow White's place in cinematic history, to carefully tweak the story for today's audiences without belittling its legacy. We'll never know, because the conversation turned sour long before the film was anywhere near finished. The result, a public relations dumpster fire, a stinging box office defeat, and one more piece of proof that no brand is immune to self-inflicted wounds. Even the gargantuan Disney, with all its resources, cannot simply wave a magic wand and fix a film when the public has collectively decided it's not worth their time or money. In the end, that's the real tragedy. A beloved, time-honored fairy tale that should have easily soared was weighed down by the negativity swirling around its lead and the misguided choices behind the scenes. Instead of a storybook triumph, we got a clumsy retread that will likely go down as one of the most embarrassing chapters in Disney's modern history. So, how do we wrap this up? Perhaps with the notion that humility and respect are critical elements when dealing with legacy properties. People can forgive a lot, maybe questionable CGI, maybe a less-than-perfect reimagining, but they rarely forgive a direct insult to something they've cherished since childhood. If there's a single silver lining, it's that the fiasco provides a lesson for future remakes. Do not treat your source material as disposable. Show the fans you understand what made the original special, even if you plan on updating certain aspects. It's not complicated, but evidently it was too tall an order in this scenario. Thank you for sticking with me through this extended deep dive into the frustrations surrounding the new Snow White. At the very least, we can walk away having learned how quickly a film can go from guaranteed blockbuster to legendary flop when you fail to respect the audience. If you enjoyed this or found it useful as a cautionary tale, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Prestige Stories. Your engagement means the world to us. Now, let's hope Disney and other major studios keep this meltdown in mind before they revamp another precious classic. We deserve better than to see our childhood favorites reshaped by people who can't be bothered to appreciate why they were loved in the first place. Stay safe, stay skeptical, and stay tuned for more incisive takes on the entertainment world's biggest missteps.